Well, hey, you, and welcome back to another episode of the Western Hippie podcast. I'm your host, Michaela. If you are on video, I have my co host, Willie, right behind me. And today is a very impromptu episode. And the reason I was inspired to record this episode is because I have a firm belief that we need to be our own best coaches, our own best advocates, because we can hire any coach we want, but we only see them once a week, maybe twice a month, depending on what kind of program you're going through. Who is going to be with us the rest of the time? Who is going to talk us through the rest of the time? It needs to be us. A coach, a personal development person, whatever you want to call that, can be the best in the world. And if we cannot get ourselves through the rest of the time, it doesn't actually matter. We can hire the best people, but until we become our own best coach, none of it really matters. And I really learned this. I've been in the self-help industry almost 10 years now, and that's what I've learned. If my inner voice, if my inner coach is not the best that it can be, it doesn't matter what anybody else is saying to me. So I'm currently going through something. And when I'm going through something, I need to talk to myself out loud because it helps give me a different perspective. And I thought, why not record it for the podcast? Because again, I have this firm belief that we need to be our own best coach. So I just wanted to give you a little look inside of how I work myself through a problem. And so I actually don't know what I'm getting myself into because I've never done this in front of anybody before. I've never recorded me doing this before. But if you're on video, I'm wearing my like Star Wars pullover, and Luke didn't know what he was getting into when he went to Dagobah. He just knew he had to go, right? And so I kind of felt the same way. Like I don't know what I'm getting into, but I felt inspired to record this, so we're gonna do it. So the first thing that, and as I'm talking through it, I will stop and explain like the principles. I've said this before on the show, but I believe how we think is greater than what we think. And so I will do my best to stop and explain why I'm taking myself through each exercise or each principle. If I don't do a good job, please reach out to me on Instagram or send me an email and just say, hey, this was a little confusing. Can you clarify? And I am more than happy to do so. So what I'm currently working through is I really want to go to the next level of income in my business. And my default can tend to be, is, let's call a spade, Michaela. My default is beat myself up. And so one of my core principles is this productive or is this counterproductive? I don't say, is this good or is this bad? Because good and bad are always subjective. So, and then when I say counterproductive or productive, I mean towards the goal that I'm currently working on. So, as I just stated, my current goal is to go to the next level of income in my business, to create more income, and also not, if I get a little more specific, I want, my dream has always been to make money while I sleep. So that is my goal, is to create funnels and systems that will create revenue as I am sleeping. So in that next level of revenue in my business, part of that includes making money while I sleep. And then I do want to hit a certain income. So for the sake of this, I wanted to get specific just to let you know, but like for the sake of this, I'm just going to say my current goal is to go to the next level of income in my business. Okay. That becomes our target point. So if you're walking through this with me, choose your target point, whether it's a health related goal, a finance related goal, a different career related goal, like maybe you want to get promoted, a art goal, a creation goal, a content goal, whatever your goal is, just state it. So for me, go to the next level of revenue in my business. And now I'm going to go to the behavior. So I set this goal, go to the next level, and my behavior default is to beat myself up. To beat myself up that I'm not already there, to beat myself up that I could have accomplished it by now, to beat myself up that my finances aren't where I want them to be. And so as I'm beating myself up this morning, this is where like the inspiration for the show came up. This is the first question that I asked myself. Michaela, if your current goal is to create and get to the next level of revenue in your business, is beating yourself up productive towards that goal, or is it counterproductive towards that goal? Now, some people can use criticism to get themselves to a certain level. Now, if you're like me, you have learned that the criticism can only get you 3 or 4 steps ahead, and then you spiral back to step 0 or step -1 or step even -2, 3, 4, etc. And so, yes, the negative self-talk for me is productive, very, very short term, but then it will always put me back further than where I even started because it puts me in a guilt or shame spiral. Since I know that about myself, I know the answer to that question is beating myself up is counterproductive towards that goal. Okay, boom. Now I need a new strategy. And this is where it's a little more difficult for me and why I was going to talk to myself about it out loud. And I'm now talking to you about it out loud because me letting go of this strategy is not easy for me. I just know that it's not productive. So I need a new strategy. The first thing I'm actually going to do is I actually want to get clear on what benefits and consequences beating myself up is giving me. Because if there was no benefit to it, we would not be doing it. Every behavior starts with a good intent, even lying. So if you go back, a little more backstory. The subconscious mind is in charge of 90% of our behaviors. It's where our values, our beliefs, and everything is stored. There is no time and space in the subconscious. The subconscious is developing from our second trimester in the womb to when we're 7 or 8 years old. Unless you go back and heal it, the scripts and the decisions and behaviors that you put in between your second trimester, I keep going to say semester, in the womb to when you're 7 to 8 years old are still playing out. So if you have not rewritten this, if I have not rewritten this, our 7 to 8-year-old selves are and younger are still running the shows. So we all can criticize liars all day long. However, if someone was unsafe in their childhood home and lying got them out of trouble and kept them safe, then lying started with a very good intent. It started with lying keeps me safe if I'm going to get in trouble. So now, even into adulthood, if this person's nervous system gets triggered of you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get in trouble, lie, 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 lie will keep you safe. That is what goes on. So even lying, that most of us would argue is a bad behavior, starts with a very good intent. We just have to rewire that, and that person needs to learn, like, you're not in trouble. We're adults now. We can have conversations and et cetera, et cetera. So for me, the criticism started somewhere. And when I really go back and peel the layers back, it started with my 7 to 8-year-old self. I was in second grade. So would that be, I think that would be 7, 8. I was kind of ahead. Anyway, doesn't fully matter. So I know that this is where that behavior started. So I just want you to take a minute and whatever behavior that you're sitting with or thinking about, when did this start? And even if you don't remember, a lot of us that have severe childhood trauma don't remember our childhood. Just think about, why would I have created this behavior? What is the benefit of this behavior? So for me, it was protecting me from criticism. Like if I could beat this person to the punch, because I'm kind of revealing, I think I might have revealed this in another episode, but I was always the teacher's pet. I was always the teacher's favorite. And then one year, somebody else was, and I was not used to that. And you know what was really interesting? What helped me, one of my favorite TED Talk helped me see this. One of my favorite TED Talks is from a man named Andrew Stanton, and Andrew Stanton helped write Toy Story, I think Cars, but he's worked at Pixar for quite some time. And he was asking, how do you not make Woody a complete asshole? And the way you make Woody not a complete asshole is in Toy Story is you make him kind until he doesn't get what he wants. And so what was kind of interesting for me is like, if I had a certain if I was the teacher's pet, if I was the favorite, if I was number one in the class, like I was so kind, I was so supportive, and I'm competitive as fuck. Like this is definitely where this comes in. And I've just learned to accept it about myself and use it for good and not for bad. But if I was number one, I was good. If you put me in that number 2, number 3 spot, I was going to crush you. And that was my goal, like intentionally or unintentionally, but a little bit of both. But anyway, and so then would I just would criticize myself over and over again. And then on top of that, this teacher was definitely very hard on herself as well. And so I felt like I was always really focused on math at that point. I actually think that was when, if I go back, that was when I got focused on math. Because up until that point, I was actually focused on art, but I made this piece of art and she criticized it. And so then I started criticizing myself, trying to make myself better. So I didn't experience the criticism. Like if I could beat myself to that criticism, then I wouldn't hear it out loud. Or if I've already said it to myself, it doesn't hurt as bad when it comes from the outside world. Because I'm like, oh, I already know that. I already know that. Like, leave me alone. And so the good intent that this started with was I get to beat them to the punch. I get to get ahead of the curveball so their criticism doesn't hurt as bad. Like really what the behavior is in my subconscious is I am preventing myself from getting hurt. Okay. So that is the benefit that I am getting from beating myself up. I am preventing myself from getting hurt. Okay, boom. What is the consequence? Well, I did state it. It is that counterproductivity. It is the fact that it can get me so far, but it keeps sending me backwards. And the other thing, I'm not going to sit and do the whole thing here, but the other thing that it's doing for me is I'm actually just not getting the things that mean the most to me done because I'm criticizing it before I even begin. And so that's the other thing that it's hurting me. It's like I'm not even doing what I love. And so actually, what I'm doing is hurting me more. So that is what I would continue to walk my subconscious through and show it. This behavior that we put in to protect us is actually hurting us. Like we're doing this thing to not get hurt, but now it's actually causing more hurt. And so I would continue to give my subconscious evidence of what we're doing can get, because a lot of times when we go to rewire the subconscious, this is where mistakes get made is so the behavior, productive or not, productive or counterproductive, is still meeting a need. And so if we remove that behavior without replacing it with a more productive behavior, that need has to get met no matter what. So my need to feel safe needs to get met, to not be hurt needs to get met no matter what. So I don't want to do it with this behavior anymore. I don't want to do it with the self-criticism anymore. So what do I want to replace it with? And this is something that's been really hard for me, and I've had to do this in other areas of my life. My goal is actually to lower the bar on my standard. So what's hurting me right now is I continue to place the bar so high on my standard that I can't even reach it. And then I'm not even doing anything. So I'm actually going to lower the standard and say the only way that I can get hurt is if I don't do it at all. So one of the things, I mentioned this in the last podcast, I'm working on a fiction book and I'm writing music for the fiction book. So the standard that I'm going to lower it is the only way I can truly get hurt by this thing is if I do not do it at all. Because then I would not be expressing this part of myself that desperately wants to be expressed. And that repression of the expression is what's hurting me. It's 110% what's hurting me. So I'm going to continue to stack these things and give myself evidence in my subconscious of how the behavior that I am doing is actually hurting me more than it's helping me, because I want to keep proving to the subconscious that we're doing this to not get hurt, but it is actually hurting us. So one of the things I'm going to replace it with is I'm actually going to lower the standard. And the other thing I'm going to do is there's this guy, he's kind of an interesting, I think his name's Marty Richards or Marty. The only thing like I really remember is I heard him on the Finding Mastery podcast, and he directed Cher's If I Can Turn Back Time music video. And he also did Garth Brooks live at Madison Square Garden, I believe. I can't remember. He did some other stuff. Very interesting dude. Like, I actually really recommend you go listen to that episode on the Finding Mastery podcast. With Dr. Michael Gervais, I wish I could remember his actual name. I think it was Marty Richards or something like that. But you could also just look up the director of the Turn Back Time music video and his name will pop up. But anyway, he was saying like, if he's happy with it, he knows it's good. And that's the thing that I'm really working on and grading right now is like, okay, the only thing that matters actually is if you're happy with it, Michaela. Nobody else needs to be happy with it. If they love it, great. If they don't. So in a weird way, lowering the bar makes it just so I'm getting done. But the other thing that I'm flipping, so instead of the self-criticism, it is turning, like, imagine like a ball coming down that's a mirror and there's just mirrors on the outside of it and it's reflecting outwards. I actually want to flip that mirror inside. Like the only reflections that I want to see of this art is my own thoughts about it. And so it flips it from I'm seeking external validation. So now instead of the criticism, I actually want to flip it to internal validation. So instead of, because that's the criticism, right? Because I'm trying to not get hurt by somebody outside of myself. So I'm criticizing myself to beat them to the punch so they can't say anything bad about it. So now I just want to flip it and say, like, how can I compliment myself? How can I give myself that validation? And that's where the lowering the bar ties in. Because the only validation that I want to get right now in this moment to keep moving forward is I just want to be doing it. I just want to get in the reps. And so the only validation I am seeking right now that I want to flip it to, so I'm flipping it to from criticism and mean self-talk to internal validation just by getting the reps in. So now I'm going to create a calendar of some sort. I'm not going to do it on the podcast. I'm just going to tell you what I'm going to do afterwards is I'm going to write this out and I'm going to set a goal of just one thing a day. And not only I forgot to put my phone on do not disturb. So we're going to do that cuz you're going to hear a little ding in the show. And let me just double check. So I'm going to write down my goal. So let's see. I want to write, and I'm again with lowering and setting the bar. Because for me, this is all relative, but writing like 100 words is very easy for me. It's something I can do very quickly. So I'm going to set a goal of I'm going to write 100 words per day. Because for me, this is where you need to know yourself. Some people, it needs to be weekly goals, monthly goals. For me, it does need to be daily because if I don't have a consistent routine, it doesn't happen. It doesn't really matter about the weekly goal. So I'm going to set a daily goal of writing 100 words per day. That's it. And after I get done writing 100 words per day, I'm going to give myself 3 compliments. And I already know one of the compliments. You did it. You sat your ass down. You wrote your 100 words. Check. 2. That sentence was really great. I think that sentence is really good. That idea is really good. Like even in the fiction book, the character development that I'm working on, I'm like really getting to know these characters. And so I could say like, oh, you're really getting intimate with these characters. You're really getting to know them. And so then I'm going to and if I'm really being hard on myself, so the goal with these compliments and the goal with saying this stuff to ourselves, you actually want to feel the emotional shift. So if you're writing them down and you're like, like bullshit, 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 you want to keep writing things down until you feel it. So like, let's say I only write 3 things down. If I'm not actually feeling better about it, I'm going to keep writing until I do feel better. And because for me, everyone's a little bit different, but for me, all I have to do is get to the truth. And so if I am writing compliments, even if I'm trying not to believe them, if I know they're true, I can start getting my subconscious mind on board. So some of this really is just going to be trial and error with you figuring out how you work best and really figuring out what it takes to get your subconscious mind on board. But for me, it just needs to be linked to the truth, which is amazing. And for all of us, we won't pretty much argue with the truth. We may not receive the truth, but we won't argue with it, right? If I give you a compliment that you know is true about yourself, you may not fully receive it, but you are going to not argue with it, right? You're going to say, oh, shucks, or, something like that. So just get that feeling like, no, that is true about, like for me, like you wrote that 100 words really quick. Like that was amazing. Like, oh yeah, no, I'm good. Like I could type so fast, right? So it's like, I'm not going to argue with that. Now, if you say if I'm a good writer, I'm not fully rooted to that, right? Like, I know I'm a good writer, but like the level that I want to be, right? And so then that would be something I would work on as well. Okay, so like I said, I did not know how that was going to go. I just kind of want to recap a little bit. So find your current goal and then state it. Write your current behavior that you're doing. So for me, it was getting to the next level of my finances. Oh, I'm going to tie this all together. And then the current behavior was beating myself up. So why this was tied to writing specifically is because there's this, I'm going to get into it more, but there's this law called the universal law of reflections. And so it's showing up for me in my finances, but what I'm actually beating myself up over is the fact that I'm not sitting down and writing my book. And so my goal, especially with finances, like I feel like it's just not flowing. So I feel like my finances aren't flowing. And my goal is to get things to feel like they're flowing again. And what gets me to feel like things are flowing again, it is writing. So actually before we finish out, it's so interesting trying to put your like knowledge into words, because you realize it's all just been in your head and you actually have to like pull step by step out because you realize you're missing pieces, and you guys can't read my mind. So this is all just part of the adventure, which is fun. So thank you for being here on the adventure with me. But okay, so we're going to state our goal, we're going to state our behavior, and then we're going to do the benefits and the consequences of that behavior. And then we're going to start proving to the subconscious as to why this current behavior is doing more harm than good. And you're going to continue to prove that to yourself until you feel like you're ready to let that behavior go because you realize how much pain it's causing you. Then you're going to choose a new behavior and you're going to attach as much pleasure to it as you can. So that is lowering the bar. And then that is giving yourself the compliments to show you why this was a good thing. And then again, if you want to get a little more specific, it is, how are you feeling about this thing? So your goal, like, how are you feeling about it? Like I said, that's where the feeling thing come in. I'm feeling really heavy about it. I'm feeling really restricted about my finances. I want to get the flowing going again. What is a behavior that's just going to make you, because here's the thing, when we feel something about something, like if we feel stuck or stagnant versus flowing and free, it's not the truth. It's just a feeling. So the other thing you can do is write all the ways you feel stuck. And then on the opposite side of that, you can write all the counter evidence. So I feel stuck in my finances because. And so for me, I could write like, well, you're not, because you can actually just go make money today. Well, you're not because, and then I would continue to go, and all the ways that I would feel it, I would pretend like I'm a judge in court and I would start finding all the counter evidence. And again, we're looking for that shift until you feel that shift. So, that is all I have for today. Thank you for being here. Like I said, this is a little different episode, but it was something that I really wanted to do and start just showing you guys how I walk myself through things. Like, there is a time and a place to go hire a coach, to go hire a mentor. I'm currently taking classes. I currently have 2 mentors and I love it. I love the coaching and just like, I love getting help and learning from people. It's just one of my favorite things. And we really have to be our own best coach and our best mentor to get what we need out of learning from all of these things. And one of the things that I'm actually going to create a framework of when it's time to hire somebody and when it's time to kind of, in the part of the hero's journey where we go it alone. So when is it time to meet Yoda? And then when is it time to fly away from Dagobah and kind of go on this other hero's journey? So anyway, thank you for being here on another episode of the Western Hippie podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and subscribe so you don't miss another episode. And yeah, just thank you for being here. And Willie and I will talk to you next week.